summer nights never forget. They carry whispers of every choice, every heartbreak, every promise left hanging in the air. And this summer for Belly, every wave that crashed against the shore was a reminder she couldn't run from love. And she couldn't hide from the decision waiting for her. Belly had always believed summer was supposed to feel endless. Long days, golden sunsets, laughter echoing across the beach house, and memories that wrapped around her like the ocean breeze. But this summer was different. It wasn't about sunburns and sandcastles anymore. It was about love. Real love. The kind that leaves you awake at night, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment, every word, every mistake. The kind that forces you to grow up faster than you planned. From the very beginning, her heart had been caught between two brothers, Conrad and Jeremiah. Each one pulled her in a different direction, each one making her wonder what kind of love she truly wanted. Jeremiah was safe, warm and steady, like the sun. He could make her laugh when the world felt heavy, and he never let her feel alone. With him, she didn't have to worry about the weight of silence or the sharp edges of pain. But then there was Conrad. Quiet, distant, and complicated, yet every time he looked at her, she felt like the world stopped moving. He was the ocean sometimes, calm, sometimes storming, but always deep, always pulling her in, no matter how hard she tried to resist. This summer was supposed to bring answers, but it only brought more questions. Belly found herself caught in moments she couldn't escape. A glance that lingered too long. A memory that replayed no matter how hard she pushed it away. Nights when Jeremiah's laughter felt comforting, but then the thought of Conrad's hand brushing hers kept her from breathing steady. It was like her heart was playing tug-of-war. She was the rope. Every time she thought she had decided, something shifted. Jeremiah's smile would remind her of safety, but then Conrad's rare softness would shatter all her walls. She wanted to be fair. She wanted to be honest. But the truth was messy. The truth was that she loved them both, just in different ways. And choosing meant breaking someone's heart, maybe even her own. As the days passed, the tension grew heavier. The beach house, once a place of joy, felt like a stage where every move was being watched. Every silence screamed louder than words. Belly felt the pressure building, pressing down on her chest. Her diary pages filled with questions she couldn't answer. Was she without Conrad? Who was she without Jeremiah? Who would she be if she chose one and lost the other forever? Still, the world around her didn't stop. The waves kept crashing, the summer kept moving forward, and the decision crept closer, like the tide reaching higher on the shore. Belly knew she couldn't escape it. She couldn't stay in the middle. Forever, love demanded a choice. And soon, she would have to make it. The night of the bonfire was supposed to feel like every other summer. Flames rising high against the dark sky, music spilling from speakers, the laughter of old friends mixing with the sound of waves in the distance. But for Belly, it wasn't just another summer night. It was the night where everything inside her came undone. She could no longer pretend that the choice wasn't waiting, staring at her like a shadow that followed wherever she went. She stood on the edge of the firelight, watching silhouettes move in and out of the glow, but her mind wasn't there. It was back in all the little moments that had led her here. Conrad's hand brushing hers on the porch when he thought she wouldn't notice. Jeremiah's voice promising he would always be there for her. The sound of Conrad saying her name like it mattered, like she mattered. The warmth of Jeremiah's laugh filling the silence when her chest felt too heavy. Every memory was like a spark from the fire brief, burning, impossible to hold. The truth was simple. She loved Conrad. She always had, even when he was distant, even when he pushed her away. Even when Jeremiah was right there, waiting, offering her the kind of love most girls dreamed about. But love isn't always simple. Love isn't always fair. And as much as she tried to convince herself otherwise, her heart had chosen long before. Her mind was ready to admit it. She felt it every time Conrad looked at her, even if he barely spoke. It was something in his eyes, pain, hope, fear that she couldn't ignore. It wasn't loud, it wasn't easy, but it was real and standing. There, surrounded by the glow of fire and the pull of the ocean, she realized she didn't want easy. She didn't want safe. She wanted the love that scared her, the love that pushed her to grow, the love that burned as bright as it hurt. The waves crashed louder, as if echoing her thoughts. The air felt heavy, like the world was holding its breath, waiting for her. To step forward, choosing Conrad meant breaking Jeremiah's heart, meant losing something beautiful, something safe. But pretending otherwise meant lying not just to them, but to herself. She was tired of lying. Her chest tightened as the moment sharpened into focus. She wasn't a little girl anymore, waiting for someone to choose her. This time, she was the one who had to decide. The fire popped, the ocean pulled, and for the first time all summer, she felt clear. Not calm, not steady, just clear. The choice was painful, but it was hers. She whispered his name in her head, not loud enough for anyone else to hear, but enough to steady her own heart. Conrad, the one she had always come back to, no matter how much it hurt. The one who felt like both the storm and the shelter. The night around her kept moving, laughter rising, music shifting, flames flickering, but inside Belly, everything stilled. She knew what came next. And even though her heart ached for Jeremiah, even though her future felt uncertain, she couldn't run from it anymore. She had reached the turning point. The moment the summer stopped being about confusion and became about truth, Belly had finally chosen. The beach was quiet that night. The kind of quiet that only comes after everything else has been said and done. The bonfire had faded, the music had drifted away with the last of the laughter, and Belly found herself standing beneath the moonlight, the sand cool beneath her feet. The world seemed softer here, gentler, like it understood what she was about to do. For weeks, she had carried the weight of her choice, stumbling between moments with Jeremiah and shadows of Conrad. But now here, there was no more running. Conrad stood a few steps away, his hands in his pockets, his eyes fixed on the horizon, like he was afraid to look at her. That was always his way distance. Silence, a shield he used to keep himself from. Breaking, but Belly had known him long enough to see past it. She saw the boy who had once carried her seashells home from the beach, who had taught her constellations under the night sky, who had broken her heart 100 times without even meaning to. She saw him, and in that moment, she couldn't pretend anymore. Her voice trembled at first, but the words came anyway. Conrad. His name felt like it belonged here, carried by the ocean breeze, heavy with everything unsaid. He turned, and for the first time in what felt like forever, their eyes met. There, it was the storm she always saw in him, the one that scared her and pulled her in all the same. "I can't keep pretending," she whispered, her throat tight. "I can't keep acting like I don't know where my heart is." Conrad's jaw tightened, his shoulders stiff, like he was bracing himself for something painful. He had spent the whole summer preparing to lose her, to watch her drift toward Jeremiah. He thought that's what she wanted. He thought that's what she had chosen. But then she stepped closer, the distance between them shrinking with each breath. "It's you," Belly said, her voice breaking but steady enough to be true. "It's always been you." The silence that followed wasn't empty, was full. Full of every memory, every missed chance, every moment that had brought them. Here, the sound of the ocean filled the spaces between them, like the world was waiting for him to answer. Conrad's eyes softened, the walls he built around himself crumbling in the glow of her words. He didn't move at first, didn't speak. It was as if he was afraid that if he reached for her she would vanish, that the moment would dissolve like foam on the tide. But then, slowly, carefully, he let out the breath he had been holding all summer. "Belly," he said, and her name in his voice was enough to undo her completely. It wasn't loud. It wasn't desperate. It was real. It was everything he hadn't said before, everything he had tried to bury. Her heart pounded as she felt the truth settle between them, not as a question, but as an answer. She had chosen, and she knew it wasn't going to be easy. Choosing Conrad meant walking into the storm, facing heartbreak and hope all at once, but it was her choice. And for the first time, she felt the strength in owning it. He stepped closer, closing the final space between them. Their hands brushed, tentative at first, then stronger, as if letting go was no longer an option. No promises were spoken, no vows made, just the unshakable truth of two people who had been circling each other for years and finally collided. Belly's chest ached, but in the best way. She didn't know what the future would hold, pain, joy, maybe both. And here under the stars and the steady pull of the ocean, she knew this. She had chosen Conrad. And for once, she wasn't afraid. Asterisk. The night after the choice felt quieter than any summer night Belly had ever known. The world hadn't changed. Waves still rose and fell. The stars still blinked across the sky, but inside her, something had shifted forever. Choosing Conrad wasn't the end of a story. It was the start of one. A story that carried both the warmth of love and the weight of loss. Belly sat on the porch of the beach house. The boards cool beneath her legs, the soft hum of crickets filling the silence. Around her, her chest felt heavy, not because she doubted her decision, but because she knew what it had cost. Somewhere inside that same house was Jeremiah, the boy who had loved her so openly, who had laughed with her on days when she couldn't find her smile, who had offered her a future where love was easy. He was the light she could have chosen, but she hadn't, and the pain of that truth stung like salt water on fresh skin. Her mind wandered back to Conrad, to the way his voice had cracked when he said her name, to the way his hand finally held hers like it was something fragile and precious. For years she had waited for that moment, proof that his love wasn't just a dream she had been chasing, but something real, something alive between them, and now it was hers. Still, she knew that loving Conrad wouldn't come without storms. His silences, his fears, his tendency to push away when things became too much. Those parts of him didn't disappear just because she had chosen him. She wasn't stepping into a fairy tale. She was stepping into something raw, unpredictable, but real. The porch light flickered above her, casting long shadows across the sand, and she thought of the summers past, the little girl she had been, dreaming of being noticed, dreaming of belonging to something bigger than herself. That girl was gone. In her place sat someone who had finally learned that love wasn't about being chosen. It was about choosing. It's about standing in the middle of the storm and saying, "This is where I want to be." Belly's chest ached for Jeremiah, but she also knew the truth. He deserved someone who could love him fully, without hesitation, without a heart tied somewhere else. She couldn't be that for him, not when Conrad was the echo that filled every corner of her. Letting him go would hurt, maybe forever. But it was the only way forward. The ocean breeze carried the smell of salt and pine, the same as every summer night before, but Belly felt the difference in herself. This summer had stripped her down, forced her to face the hardest parts of love, the pain, the risk, the unfairness of it all. But it had also given her clarity. She had chosen not the safer path, but the truest one. She leaned back, looking up at the stars, and let herself breathe. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring: arguments, tears, moments of laughter, or nights when she would wonder if she had made a mistake. But for now, sitting in the quiet, she knew her heart had spoken. And that was enough. The summer hadn't turned out the way she once dreamed. It wasn't simple. It wasn't perfect. But it was real. And in the end, that was all she had ever wanted. Asterisk, the dawn crept slowly over the horizon, painting the ocean in shades of gold and pink. Belly sat wrapped in a thin blanket on the sand, her knees pulled to her chest, watching as the night finally gave way to morning. It should have felt like relief, like a fresh start after the weight of her choice, but instead, it felt like standing at the edge of something vast and unknown. She had chosen Conrad, yes, but choices always leave shadows, somewhere behind. Her, in the quiet of the beach house, Jeremiah was still carrying the weight of her answer. She could almost feel it, like a pulse in the air, an ache that belonged to him, but somehow lived in her too. Belly closed her eyes, pressing her forehead against her knees, knowing that loving one brother meant breaking the other. That truth would follow her long after summer faded. But when she thought of Conrad, his hesitant smile, the way his hand finally held hers without letting go, her chest softened. He had always been the storm, unpredictable and distant, but beneath it, All there was a tenderness she had glimpsed for years. Choosing him wasn't the end of the struggle. It was only the beginning. She knew he would still push her away at times. She knew he would still battle the weight of his own silence. But she also knew that this time, she wasn't just waiting for him to choose her. She had chosen him, and that choice carried its own power. The waves rolled in steadily, smoothing away the footprints from the night before, erasing the evidence of everything that had happened. Belly wondered if that's what time would do: soften. The sharp edges of Jeremiah's hurt blur the lines of guilt in her chest, and leave behind something quieter, something healed. But time was slow, and the ache was fresh, and for now, all she could do was sit with it, still beneath the sorrow. There was something else, something fragile but unshakable. Hope. Hope that she and Conrad could build something real. Hope that Jeremiah would one day forgive her. Hope that the summer, despite its storms, had taught her what love was meant to be. Not easy, not perfect, but honest. The morning light stretched higher, and Belly stood, brushing the sand from her legs. She turned back to the house, its windows, glowing faintly in the new day. Inside waited two brothers whose lives would never be the same because of her choice. One would carry the joy of being loved, the other the heartbreak of being left behind. She would carry both. As she walked toward the house, her steps slow but steady, the future felt uncertain. There would be arguments. There would be tears. There would be moments when she questioned herself. But there would also be laughter, forgiveness, and maybe even healing. The summer wasn't over yet, and neither was her story. And as the sun rose fully, spilling light across the shore, one truth echoed in her heart: this was only the beginning. Asterisk, the days after her decision felt different, like summer itself had. Shifted. The air still smelled of salt and sunscreen. The cicadas still buzzed in the trees, but there was an invisible weight pressing down on everything. Belly walked along the shoreline in the early morning, the sand damp beneath her feet, the tide pulling at her ankles as though it wanted to drag her backward. She wondered if that was what choices always felt, like half freedom, half fear. Conrad had been quiet since that night, though not in the way he used to be. His silence wasn't distance anymore. It was something softer, like he was learning how to let himself be present with her. He didn't say much, but when he looked at her, she felt seen in a way she had craved for years. Every glance was a reminder of why she had chosen him. Yet beneath his quiet presence, Belly sensed his uncertainty. Loving Conrad was like holding on to the ocean, beautiful, endless, but always moving, always threatening to slip away. Jeremiah, though, was the echo she couldn't escape. He moved through the house differently, now slower, quieter, the brightness drained from him. She caught glimpses of him in the kitchen, his laughter replaced with tight smiles that never reached his eyes. It broke something inside her each time, knowing she had been the one to put that sadness there. He didn't speak of it, didn't confront her, but the silence between them was louder than any fight. Belly wanted to believe time would soften the hurt, but sometimes she feared it would only make the distance permanent. She sat on the porch one evening, watching the sky bleed orange and pink as the sun sank. The beach house had always been a place of joy, a place where summers were golden and endless. But now it felt fragile, like every corner held a memory heavy with meaning. The creak of the screen door, the smell of Susanna's flowers still clinging to the garden, the echoes of laughter that felt too far away, everything reminded her that nothing stayed the same forever. Belly wondered if she had been selfish. Choosing Conrad felt like following her heart, but it had also meant shattering Jeremiah's. And what if Conrad couldn't hold on to her the way she needed? What if the storm inside him became too much, and she was left with nothing but broken promises and regret? These questions haunted her, even as she leaned into the quiet moments with Conrad, even as his presence steadied her. But deep down, Belly knew this was the truth of love. It wasn't meant to be safe. It wasn't meant to guarantee happiness. Love was risk. Love was pain. Love was stepping into the unknown because the alternative was emptiness. And despite the fear clawing at her chest, She refused to regret choosing him. As the last light faded from the sky, Belly whispered to herself, almost like a prayer, "Please let this be worth it." She didn't know if anyone heard the stars, the waves, maybe even Conrad himself, but the words hung in the air, fragile and heavy. The summer wasn't over. The hardest parts were still ahead. And somewhere deep inside, Belly knew that this choice would ripple far beyond these warm nights, shaping not just this summer, but every summer that followed.